The room was still except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft clink of a fork against ceramic. My hands moved mechanically, cutting into the overcooked chicken breast I had made for dinner because she said she wouldn't be home late tonight. But she was late. Again. Her wine glass, untouched, sat at her place across from me. I'd stopped asking questions a while ago because the answers were always the same, and yet they never told me anything at all. 8:40. I ate alone again. I rinsed the dishes, dried my hands, and stood there by the sink, staring out the window into the dark backyard. The porch light flickered. I should have fixed that weeks ago, but I didn't. I think part of me wanted to leave it broken like some small rebellion. A silent declaration. Everything is not fine. The garage door opened at 9:17 p.m. sharp. She walked in with her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. Expensive, sharp, deliberate. Jessica always made an entrance, even when she wasn't trying. She had on the navy blue blazer she wore when she wanted to feel powerful, like the world couldn't touch her. She looked good. She always did. But I didn't feel that flutter in my chest anymore. That had died somewhere along the way, and I hadn't even noticed until it was already cold. "You're home late," I said without turning around. "Had to stay for some last-minute revisions," she replied quickly, too quickly, dropping her bag by the door. "New client. Total nightmare." I finally looked at her. "You smell like someone else's cologne." She blinked, a flicker of something in her expression. Annoyance? Guilt? Disgust? Flashed for a second before she smoothed it over with a smile. "Are we doing this again, Ty?" "No," I said. "We're not doing anything." She sighed like I was exhausting, like I was the one who made everything heavy. She walked to the counter and pulled out a file folder, thick and yellow, like something straight out of a law office. "Okay, so don't freak out," she said, as if that phrase had ever led to anything good in the history of humanity. But I was messing around with this idea earlier and thought it would be funny. It's a joke. Seriously. She slid the folder across the table. I opened it without a word. Divorce papers. Real ones. Filled out completely. Her name. My name. Listed assets. Custody of the dog because we never had kids. Signed at the bottom, in her unmistakable, looping handwriting. I looked up at her. She was watching me like a child who just broke something valuable and was hoping you'd laugh instead of yell. "Jessica," I said, my voice low, "why would you joke about this?" "Because it's funny?" she said, shrugging, half laughing. "God, Tyler, lighten up. You've been so uptight lately. I thought it would make you laugh. Like, I don't know, maybe it would spark something." "Spark what?" I asked. She didn't answer. I sat down at the table, took the pen out of the drawer, and signed every page. Each stroke of ink felt like slicing through the last threads of a rope I had been clinging to for years. The calm that followed was not peaceful. It was hollow, like the silence after a building crumbles to dust. When I slid the folder back across the table, her face changed. "Wait," she said. "You're not serious." I was kidding. Ty, I was messing around. "Don't be stupid." I looked at her for a long time. "You always call me stupid when I stop forgiving you," she scoffed. "Oh my God, don't make this a thing." I stood up, walked over to the cabinet and pulled down a whiskey glass. Poured myself a drink, didn't offer her one. She hovered by the table like she didn't know what to do with her hands. She was the kind of person who always wanted to be in control, and I had just taken that away with a pen and 3 pages of finality. "Are you really going to do this?" she asked. I turned toward her. "I didn't do anything, Jess. You did." She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. And for once, the silence felt fair. The next morning felt like waking up in someone else's life. She wasn't in bed. I knew she wouldn't be. I could hear her downstairs. Fast, anxious footsteps, drawers opening, papers rustling. She was always a hurricane when she couldn't control the narrative. I stayed in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead, wondering how long she'd pretend it didn't matter. When I finally went downstairs, she was at the kitchen island, still in her sleep shirt, hair a mess, clutching a cup of coffee like it was a lifeline. The folder sat open in front of her, its contents spread out like some kind of crime scene. She didn't look at me. "You really signed them," she said, voice low. I didn't respond. She finally looked up, and her eyes were searching, probing my face for any hint of weakness, any doorway she could slip through to get back to the place where I let things go and said, "It's fine." But I didn't say anything. I just poured myself a cup of coffee and sat across from her. "That was a joke," she said, slower this time, like I was too dumb to understand. "I wasn't serious. You know I wasn't serious." I nodded. "Yeah, that's what makes it worse." She blinked. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means you thought our marriage was a place to play games. That handing me a legal document ending everything we've built together was funny. That's the joke. You're blowing this out of proportion." "No, I'm finally seeing it for what it is." Jessica scoffed and pushed away from the counter, pacing now. "You've been weird for months, always watching me like you're waiting for me to mess up. Honestly, it's exhausting, Tyler. Maybe if you spent more time actually being a husband and less time sulking around, I wouldn't have to." "Wouldn't have to what?" She stopped. That flicker again. Guilt, maybe, or something meaner. And then it was gone, replaced by her usual smirk, the one she used when she thought she had the upper hand. "You think I'm cheating on you," she said. Not a question. A weapon. I didn't look away. "Are you?" She crossed her arms. "No." I waited. She looked at the floor. "I mean, technically, no. But," I laughed. It just came out. Quiet, bitter, tired. "Technically" is a funny word to use in a marriage. "I haven't done anything wrong," she snapped. "No? You come home late smelling like someone else. You lie about where you've been. You fake divorce papers for a laugh. And now you're splitting hairs over technicalities." "I was lonely, Tyler," she said sharply, suddenly. "You stopped being here. You stopped seeing me. You just existed, like a roommate who paid half the mortgage." I nodded slowly. "And instead of talking to me, you entertained someone else." Silence. She didn't deny it. I leaned back in the chair, the legs creaking beneath me. My hand gripped the mug tighter than I meant to. My voice came out quiet. "What was his name?" "Don't do that," she said, suddenly soft. "Don't ruin this more than it already is." "I ruined it?" "Ty." "I signed them, Jess. You gave me the out. I took it." She walked over slowly, her bare feet patting against the tile. For a moment, I thought she was going to apologize, maybe cry. But instead, she placed her hand on top of the folder, sliding it back toward me. "Then I guess you better find a lawyer," she whispered. She walked out of the kitchen, and for the first time in years, I didn't follow her. By Saturday, the house no longer felt like ours. She had started treating it like a hotel lobby, passing through, never settling. Her keys would jingle on the kitchen counter for 5 minutes before she'd grab them again and vanish. No explanations, no details, no apologies. I didn't ask anymore, and that seemed to bother her more than anything. I was in the garage sorting through a toolbox when I heard her behind me. "You're really not going to fight for this?" she said. I kept my eyes on the wrench in my hand. "I fought for it for 2 years while you flirted with leaving. I'm tired." She laughed, a strange, brittle sound. "Wow, so that's it? You're just done? Wasn't that the point of your little prank?" She walked further in, arms folded. "I thought you were different. I thought you were loyal." Her face twisted. "Don't pull that card. You don't even know anything. You're just guessing." "You're right," I said. "I was guessing. But I'm not anymore." She froze. "What does that mean?" I stood up slowly and wiped my hands with a rag. Then I looked her dead in the eye. "It means I know about Zach." The name hit like a slap. Her mouth opened, closed. For once, she had no clever comeback ready. "How?" she finally choked. "I saw your texts 2 weeks ago," I said. "You left your laptop open." "I wasn't snooping. I was going to check an email. You forgot to log out." She swallowed hard, her mask cracking. "Those were old." "No, Jess. They were dated. They were recent. Specific. You thanked him for making you feel alive again. You said you couldn't stand being married to a shadow. Silence stretched between us like wire pulled tight. You had no idea I saw, I continued. You came home that night and kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. Like I didn't just read you telling another man you loved him. She looked away, jaw clenched. So when you dropped those papers on the table? I said, stepping closer. It wasn't a joke to you. It was a test. You wanted to see if I'd go along with it. Make it easy. She didn't deny it. She just whispered, I didn't think you'd actually sign. I think that's the problem, I replied. You still think you're in control. Something snapped in her face. The guilt twisted into anger. Like she was offended that I'd found out and still had the nerve to be calm. Oh, so what now? She said sharply. You get to play the victim? Is that it? Poor Tyler. Heartbroken husband. I shook my head. There are no victims here. Just consequences. She threw her hands up. You're not perfect either. I nodded slowly. No, but I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. And I didn't hand you divorce papers and call it a joke. We stood there in the garage, surrounded by tools, paint cans, old bikes, ghosts of the life we were supposed to build. She looked around like suddenly realizing this place was no longer hers. Where are you going to stay? I asked. She blinked. What? I want you out by Monday. I'll sleep on the couch until then. Her mouth fell open. You can't just. I can. And I am. She stared at me, searching my face for the man she used to manipulate with tears or silence or charm. But I wasn't there anymore. She turned and walked out without another word. This time I let her go. Monday came like a storm cloud that never broke. She didn't pack much. 2 suitcases, her laptop, some scattered items from the bathroom and bedroom. She moved in short, irritated bursts, opening drawers too hard, slamming closet doors. I stayed out of the way. I had nothing left to say. She'd ask sharp, passive-aggressive questions like, do you want me to leave the wedding photos? Or, should I take the fancy knives your mom bought us? Or are those part of your grief inventory? I didn't respond. That silence, once something she used to weaponize, now belonged to me, and it seemed to drive her insane. At 4:12 p.m., she dragged the last suitcase down the stairs and stood by the front door like she was waiting for something. An apology, maybe. A breakdown. Some sign that I would collapse. Plead with her to stay. I didn't move from the living room. You're seriously not even going to try? She asked, the edge in her voice jagged and loud in the quiet house. Try what? I asked flatly. Try to fix this. Everything. There's no us left to fix, I replied. You ended it a long time ago. I'm just giving it the name it already had. She scoffed. You used to be kind. No, Jessica, I said, standing slowly. I used to be blind. There's a difference. She stared at me for a long time. Her face flickered through a dozen emotions, none of which settled. She looked almost unfamiliar now, like someone I used to know in another life. And maybe she was. I never meant to hurt you, she said finally, in a voice that was almost human. I didn't say anything. I needed something I wasn't getting here. I was right here, I said, the words sharp and deliberate. You never once said what you needed. You just found someone else who didn't know the real you and let him make you feel shiny again. Her jaw tightened. You're acting like I'm evil. I'm not acting. You treated me like an obstacle, not a partner. I was unhappy. And instead of fixing it, you made sure I'd be unhappy too. That shut her up. She turned slowly, opened the door, then hesitated. Her silhouette stood in the doorway for a full 10 seconds before she looked back one last time. I hope one day you realize what you lost. I smiled, just barely. I did. And now I've got it back. She left. The door clicked shut behind her with the soft finality of a page turning. I waited there in the silence, not out of hesitation but acknowledgement, because I knew what that sound meant. It was over, and for the first time in years, I could finally breathe. The first night alone in the house was both quieter and louder than I imagined. Every creak of the walls, every distant car passing on the street, Every groan of the old plumbing felt magnified, like the house itself was exhaling after years of holding its breath. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the spot where she used to sleep, that shallow dent in the mattress still there, accusing me. I didn't move it, didn't try to reclaim the space. Not yet. Her absence lingered like a fog. The scent of her shampoo clung to the bathroom towel. One of her hair ties still wrapped around the faucet. In the kitchen, her favorite mug, world's okayest wife, stood upside down in the drying rack. I didn't touch any of it, not out of sentimentality, but because I wanted to sit in it for a while. The discomfort, the reality, the mess she left behind, both visible and buried. Tuesday morning, I woke up earlier than usual. There was no reason to, no alarm, no schedule. But I couldn't sleep. My mind was chewing on something, a memory I hadn't invited. It was from 2 years ago. We were in Maine, rented a cabin by the lake for our anniversary. I just made breakfast, burnt toast, overcooked eggs, but she ate it with a smile. Back then, she still smiled with her eyes. We danced barefoot on the porch to a song playing from my phone. She laughed when I stepped on her foot. She kissed me like I was still the man she chose. I sat there that morning wondering when it stopped being real for her. By Wednesday, her side of the closet was empty. The contrast was staggering. My shirts hung in neat lines, while the other half looked abandoned, as if someone had disappeared midlife. It was eerie, like she'd never been real. I caught myself staring at the vacant hangers, waiting for something to move, something to make sense. That afternoon, her sister called. Emily. We were never especially close, but we got along. She didn't know yet. Jessica hadn't told her. Tyler? She said, uncertain. Jess said something about you two taking a break? I swallowed. She left. A pause. Left. Like? She cheated. I found out. I signed the divorce papers she pretended were a joke. Emily didn't say anything at first. Then, carefully, I'm not surprised. That caught me off guard. What? I mean, I love her. She's my sister. But she's always tested things, pushed people, played games to see how far she could go before someone pushed back. She pushed too far this time. I think she knew she would. I think she wanted to. Why? She's always needed attention, validation. You were too steady for her, Ty. She mistook that for indifference. That's not what marriage is supposed to be, I said. No, Emily agreed softly. But Jess doesn't know what it's supposed to be. I'm sorry. I really am. We said goodbye. I stared at my phone for a long time after the call ended, thinking about that word. Steady. That's what I had been. Through her outbursts, her nights out, her cold silences. I was the constant, and she needed chaos. Let her have it. I went outside that night and took a long walk. The neighborhood was calm, almost too perfect. Families in lit-up houses, dogs barking behind fences. I passed the house of an elderly couple we always waved to but never really spoke with. They were on the porch holding hands, not performing, just being. And for the first time in weeks, something inside me didn't ache. It stirred. And that was the first sign I was going to be okay. By the end of that week, I began dismantling the life we built. Not out of anger, but necessity. The framed wedding photo came down first. Not with ceremony. I just passed it in the hallway, paused, and quietly took it off the nail. It didn't feel right being there anymore. Her in that white dress, smiling like a promise she never meant to keep. I didn't throw it out. I put it in a box in the attic labeled, Things That Happened. The next few days I kept busy with small, deliberate projects. I repainted the guest bathroom, cleaned the gutters, donated clothes I hadn't worn in years. I rearranged the living room furniture just to make the space feel unfamiliar, like a reset button. The couch looked strange in its new place, but it was mine now. All of it was. Sunday afternoon, I found something tucked in the bottom drawer of her nightstand. A small, leather-bound journal. It wasn't hidden, not really, but it wasn't something she ever mentioned. I sat on the bed, holding it for a long moment before I opened it. The entries weren't long. They were erratic, scattered across months, maybe years. Bits of thought, anger, confusion, doubt. Many of them written after fights, some I remembered, some I had clearly forgotten. But one page stopped me cold. Tyler doesn't see me. I'm screaming and he's staring at the wall. I need more. I deserve more. Zach sees me. There it was. In her own words. I didn't need confirmation, but seeing it written, immortalized in ink, felt like a second betrayal. Not because she was honest on paper, but because she never had the courage to be that honest with me. She had more emotional intimacy with a notebook than her husband. I closed it, placed it back in the drawer. I wasn't going to burn it or confront her. There was nothing left to say. But I understood something important in that moment. She didn't cheat because she hated me. She cheated because she didn't love herself. And no matter what I did, I was never going to be enough to fill the hole she refused to acknowledge. That night, she texted me, "Jessica, I left my black dress. The one from your brother's wedding. Can I come get it?" I stared at the screen for a while. That dress. She wore it the night she clung to me on the dance floor like she was afraid I'd disappear. Now she was the one who'd vanished. Me, I'll leave it on the porch. "Jessica, you won't even say hi?" Me, there's no version of hi that won't lead to goodbye again. She didn't reply after that. The next morning, the dress was gone. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel sad about it. Not angry, just done. Cleanly, quietly, finally done. The divorce process moved faster than I expected. Maybe it was the paperwork already being filled out. Maybe it was the fact that neither of us was fighting anymore. No custody battles. No disputes over property. Just clean signatures and scheduled meetings. Our last joint appearance was at the attorney's office. A bland, beige room with soft lighting and a polite mediator who spoke like he was hosting a podcast about grieving politely. Jessica arrived 5 minutes late, dressed in black like she was attending a funeral. I didn't stand when she walked in. She didn't look at me. We sat opposite each other with a table between us that held nothing but a stack of documents and a bowl of peppermints. She reached for the pen first. "Let's just get this over with," she muttered. She signed quickly, mechanically, flipping pages like a bored office worker. I wondered if she was thinking about him, Zach. I wondered if he was waiting for her in the parking lot, engine running. A fresh start wrapped in leather seats and false promises. When it was my turn, I took a little longer. Not to be dramatic, not to make a point. I just wanted to make sure I felt everything as it passed through me. This final undoing of years, vacations, fights, reconciliations, holidays, late-night takeout, anniversaries, plans that never got off the ground. I signed. The silence afterward was loud enough to be a scream. As we stood to leave, she finally looked at me. Her eyes weren't glassy or red. They were dry, sharp, and unreadable. "Just so you know," she said, voice low, "he's not some fantasy. He listens. He gets me. You never tried to understand me." I nodded once. "Then I hope he's everything you ran for me to find." That hit something. I saw her jaw twitch. She wanted to say something else, but instead, she just turned and walked away. The receptionist handed me a copy of the finalized documents in a manila envelope. I held it like it was something toxic. I didn't go home right away. I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just turned the wheel and let the road pull me where it wanted. I ended up near the pier where Jess and I used to go for late-night ice cream runs. We hadn't been there in over 2 years. I parked, got out, and walked to the railing. The ocean was flat and dark, stretching out like a quiet truth that didn't need explaining. I leaned against the cold metal, letting the wind pull at my shirt. Behind me, a couple laughed. Young, probably 20-something. I heard her say, "Don't let me fall," and him answer, "I won't." I remembered saying the same thing once, and I meant it. But sometimes, love doesn't fall apart with a crash. Sometimes, it rots quietly beneath the surface until there's nothing left to hold. I stood there until my hands were numb. Then I drove home. Alone. Willingly. I didn't hear from her for nearly a month. No texts. No calls. Not even a casual like on old Instagram photos. I'd muted her account after the night she left the dress. Part of me worried she'd start posting pictures of her and him, smiling somewhere new like the past never happened. But she didn't. Either she was trying to be discreet or she just didn't care to show her life anymore. I didn't check. I poured my attention into the house. Painted the master bedroom a deep navy, stripped the sheets from our bed and bought new ones. Clean, white, sharp. I swapped out the curtains, donated the throw pillows she insisted on that were too pretty to actually use, and replaced the dining table we picked together with a smaller one. Every room changed, and with every change, I started to feel a little less haunted. One afternoon, I opened the hall closet and found her old scarf, that burnt orange wool one she loved. The one I bought for her in Denver, the weekend we got snowed in and drank whiskey from coffee mugs while watching storms through the window. That scarf had history, but it had no place here anymore. I stared at it in my hands for a long time before I put it in the donation box. That night, Emily called again, her sister. "Can I ask you something?" she said after the usual small talk. "Of course. Would you ever take her back?" I wasn't expecting it. The question landed sharp, but I didn't flinch. "No," I said simply. "Good," she replied. I had to ask. She's been saying things. Regret, confusion, second thoughts. She's not with Zach anymore, if that matters. Didn't. She threw away something stable for something shiny, I said. Now the shine wore off, and she's staring at the wreckage. Emily sighed. I told her you were the best thing she ever had. She knew. That's why she tested it. Emily didn't try to defend her sister, and that, oddly, made me feel more seen than anything Jess had offered in the last 2 years. "I'm glad you're okay," she said. "You sound lighter." "I am." We hung up. I sat on the couch and looked around the room. The new furniture, the space, the absence of weight. Felt like mine now. Not a museum of broken promises. Not a place holding its breath. Later that week, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. It was from her. 5 pages of looping cursive, drenched in "I'm sorry. I was lost. You didn't deserve that. And maybe if we had just talked more." She even said, "Zach wasn't real life. He was just noise I used to drown out everything I didn't want to feel." There was no request for reconciliation. No plea to try again. Just a backward glance. I read it once, then again, then folded it quietly and placed it in the same box as the wedding photo. Not because I forgave her, but because I was done letting her pain take up space in mine. Weeks turned into months. Life didn't move quickly. It unfolded slow and intentional. I got used to the silence, not as an absence, but as peace. I started cooking again, not out of obligation, but because I enjoyed it. I joined a gym not to get revenge fit or whatever cliche people love to throw around, but because I wanted to feel strong. For me, people asked occasionally what happened between Jessica and me. I kept it brief. It didn't work out. No dramatic recounts. No bitterness. The story was mine, but I wasn't interested in letting it define me in casual conversations. What she did wasn't the most important part anymore. I ran into her once, at a cafe near downtown, one we used to visit on lazy Sundays, the kind with mismatched mugs and handwritten menus on chalkboards. I hadn't been there since before she left. That morning I just felt like going. A quiet urge. No meaning behind it. She was at a table near the window, sipping something out of a to-go cup. Alone. We locked eyes for maybe 3 seconds. She didn't smile. Neither did I. She looked older. Not in years, but in something behind her eyes, like she was tired from chasing too many things that didn't want to be caught. She didn't wave. She looked back at her phone. I ordered my drink and sat outside. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't angry or anxious, just still. She left 10 minutes later. Walked past me. Didn't say a word. And neither did I. Felt like the final thread snapping loose, not violently, just naturally. The quiet end to a symphony that no longer needed to be played. That night, I opened my laptop and started writing again. Something I hadn't done in years. Fiction, mostly. Characters with flaws and hopes and regrets. But one thing I noticed, I wasn't writing about her. Not directly. Not even close. The real turning point wasn't the affair, or the confrontation, or the signing. It was the moment I realized she was never coming back. Not to me, not to the version of herself I thought I knew. That version had never existed outside of my hope. And I was finally okay with that. In her absence, I found the man I'd set aside to become her safety net. The one who dreamed, who wanted stillness, who didn't equate peace with boredom. The man who didn't need chaos to feel alive. That man was home again. A year after the day she left, I found myself standing on the back porch of the house I once thought we'd grow old in. The sun was setting slow and golden, casting a warm stretch of light across the yard. The same yard where we once planned to build a garden. She wanted tomatoes. I wanted herbs and jalapenos. We never planted a single thing. But the soil was still there. Empty, but ready. I leaned against the railing, coffee in hand, and listened to the quiet. No tension. No anticipation of footsteps or arguments or fake smiles. Just birds, wind through trees, and the kind of stillness that once terrified me, now welcomed. I had learned something in the aftermath, not all at once, but in fragments. Like pulling glass from a wound, piece by piece. You learn how deep the pain goes, how much you let slide, how long you can live in denial when you're scared to lose someone. But also, you learn that you can survive losing them. I didn't crumble. She was chaos dressed like comfort. I didn't see it at first because I was too busy loving who I hoped she was. But people will show you who they are eventually. You just have to be brave enough to look. She lied. She manipulated. She disrespected me not with screaming or violence, but with shrugs and gaslighting and dismissive smirks. And when she got bored, she crafted her exit under the disguise of a joke, never expecting I'd call her bluff. But I did, and I don't regret it. Would I take her back? No. Would I do it all again? Honestly, maybe, because it taught me more than I ever wanted to know, but exactly what I needed. About boundaries, about self-worth, about what love should never feel like. To anyone reading this who's in that place, on the edge, doubting your own instincts, waiting for them to finally love you the way you've been loving them, walk away. Don't wait for proof. Don't wait for apologies that won't come. Don't wait to become someone else just to earn the affection that should have been given freely. Leave. And don't just leave physically, leave emotionally, spiritually. Reclaim the space they took and make it yours again. Paint your walls. Change your furniture. Change your life. Because one day, you'll wake up in that same bed where the pain once lived, and you'll realize the silence isn't heavy anymore. It's healing, and you're finally free.